Greetings, everyone. It's already the end of April somehow. So here we are doing our Q&A session for April 2024 on the 20th of every single month. I post a question call on Patreon that allows you to post questions, and you will see the answers to those questions either right here in the Q&A session, or I will get back to you and say, hey, I'm actually going to turn that question into a class or an advanced class, or I'm going to cover it as part of a lesson in an upcoming course. So I will definitely find a way to get you the answer, or I'll just send you some resources so you have your answer right away. So this month we're going to do 3, and each of these is really fantastic. And I think it'll open up a nice little conversation. Try to keep it short because I know that we're all very excited to be outside playing in the beautiful weather, seeing all the plants, connecting with all the plants. So we'll do these 3, and a couple others that I got are going to be community classes in the coming month and a half or so. Okay. So starting off, do you have any advice for keeping connected to your practice when feeling a lack of hope with the current state of the world? This is an important question, and one that I've definitely been feeling, and I know other people have been feeling too, so I really appreciate it being asked. Things seems like we go through waves of things feeling really hopeful and like we're on the precipice of really positive change, and then things feeling like they're as bad as they've ever been, and what's the point? I know I definitely go through those feelings myself, usually on a daily basis, kind of ups and downs. I will say this because the answer is probably really nuanced and probably goes beyond what I am capable of talking about and my level of knowledge about things as far as how I can be helpful. I will say this, that at the core of my personal practice is a concept of harmony, right? The concept of creating beauty, creating peace, wellness, health, however you want to look at it. It boils down to, this concept of harmony, of things flowing together in a pleasing manner, of things being reciprocal and being, relationship oriented and respectful. So I believe that whatever work we do with the plants, whether it's somebody doing really deep transformative work with plants, or somebody who just takes their ashwagandha every day to help them, with adaptability and stress, we're all doing that work to try to nudge ourselves, individual cells in our body, functions and structures within our body, our communities, our families, and ultimately the world, and then ultimately the cosmos, right? Into deeper and deeper states of harmony. If the universe is made up of an infinite number of relationships, which is what I think it is, nothing happens in a vacuum, right? So there's no way that any one of us can make positive change, can create more harmony in our lives and not have that in some way spill over into the wholeness of things. So this is why I tell people we get to be selfish in our healing work, because sometimes it feels like, oh, I'm spending all this time taking care of myself and worrying about my stuff and fixing my stuff, but what can I do for the collective? And there are lots of things we can do for the collective, lots of ways we can show up for our communities, for the world, to stand in solidarity, to participate in mutual aid, to give voice to the voiceless, but also when we take care of ourselves, when we do this internal work, we are becoming more and more harmonious ourselves, which means that we stand as a point in the universe that emanates harmony, right? And I really think that it's catching. I really think that what we do internally affects the whole. It may be tiny, but it's there. So continue to take care of yourself and continue to work with the plants, because they are powerful harbingers of harmony. They are connectors of the world. They are rooted deep into the mysteries and fruited into the world of name and form. They bridge the possibility from what's manifest, and they have very interesting perspectives. They've been watching us do what we do since the beginning, and they see patterns that sometimes we miss. So this work to me is radical, it's transformative, and it benefits the whole. I think when we dovetail personal plant spirit work or, small group, kind of like what we have on Patreon, right? It's a small group of us in the grand scheme of things. We are making positive change. And when we dovetail that with each of us, trying to show up in bigger ways, that's pretty amazing. I wanted to also mention that in May, I think it's the second week in May, our Friday community class is going to be on solidarity medicine rituals. So how we can do our personal work with the plants in service of the whole. So I think I'll go a little deeper. And I was going to go into all of that here, but I think I'm just going to pin it and go into that. So great question. I love that people are thinking about this. Hopefully the perspectives are helpful. I know the feelings are heavy right now, and they should be. There's a lot of really, really bad stuff happening right now. So what we can do is continue to take care of one another, to be embody love as much as we can, and try to nudge things in the right direction as much as we're able. How effective is apple cider vinegar as a menstruum for herbs? And how much of an herbal vinegar would be effective versus standard dose of alcohol tincture of the same herb? This is an awesome question. I love whenever we get to talk about alternatives to alcohol, right? Because there are a lot of people, for one reason or another, they don't want to do the standard alcohol-based tincture. And so it's nice to have options. We have, of course, glycerites, but glycerites, as you probably heard me say before, for me, are too messy. They're too much of a pain. And the short shelf life and the sticky bottles and the mucked up pipettes, I don't like to mess with them, right? If I have to give somebody glycerites, I'd tell them to go buy them from Herb Farm or somebody else. Like, I don't make that for people. So, apple cider vinegar works on a couple levels. First, of course, it's mostly water, right? So we're getting an aqueous extract of whatever herbs are in there, in the same way that if we were macerating in vodka, right? Vodka is like 60% water. So you're getting that aqueous extract. Whatever's water soluble is definitely coming out, especially if you're leaving it sit 2 or 3 weeks. Vinegar, though, doesn't have the solvent of ethanol, of alcohol, right? Rather, it has the vinegar, which is an acid. So theoretically, I think it's possible that there is deeper research into this. And I think if there is, the person to read would be James Green. He wrote that book, The Herbal Medicine Maker's Handbook. And I know he talks about vinegar maceration in there, and he may have more information about how the acids compare to the ethanols, the alcohols in an extraction. I can't remember, but that would be the book, right? To look for solid reference. So vinegar, you're getting that full aqueous extract, and you're getting the acid, which is going to break down plant materials and extract stuff. Now, in my experience, the acids are really helpful with like resiny, pitchy things. I don't know to what degree they extract the same things that alcohol extracts. And the reason we like vodka is because we get the water extraction and the solvent extraction together in one menstruum, and that's awesome. I will say this. I've taken what we call medicated vinegars before and felt like they were completely effective. I got the full hit and the full effect. So, there's probably going to be a shelf life consideration. There might be some constituents of the plant that don't readily extract into the acid or the water that they would have liked an alcohol solvent to pull them out. But I don't think that's common, right? I would say, in my opinion, it's pretty effective. The other part of this question is the dosing. So the dosing depends sort of off the cuff here. I would think it would depend on how much herb was in the menstruum, right? So if you're making a standard tincture with vodka, right? Let's say 40% alcohol, 60% water, and you're doing it in a pint jar, and the pint jar is half filled with dried plant material, and then it's topped off with alcohol, and you leave it sit, 2 or 3 weeks. The standard dose of that after pressing and filtering would be like 30 to 40 drops at a therapeutic dose. That's higher than I dose, but that would be like the standard, 30, 35, 40, 45 drops a dropper full. So if you're making a vinegar and you did the same herb to menstruum ratio, you have a pint jar, you fill it halfway with dried plant material, you top it off with apple cider vinegar. Theoretically, I think the dose would be the same. I don't know why it wouldn't be. Like, the vinegar is not less strong than an alcohol tincture unless some of the solvency is not pulling some constituents out, which you would need to sort of look at each herb. And I would think they would be, special herbs that maybe we don't work with very much. So, a tablespoon, I think, would be probably a lot. And I feel like when I did a medicated vinegar, I was taking it by the tablespoon, but I also think the person did a strong vinegar extract, but then folded in local honey, which then stretched it a little bit. So rather than taking like 2 teaspoons full, which might be that, 40 to 50 therapeutic dose level, it moves up to 3 teaspoons, which is a tablespoon, because honey was added to it, if that makes sense. So I would say if you're making the herb to vinegar ratio the same as you would with an alcohol tincture, the dosing is going to be pretty much the same. If you're going to use less herbs or you're going to fold in honey to make an oxymel, then the dosing is going to need to kind of ratchet up to accommodate for that. That's what I think. You're definitely getting the medicine, so I like that, and I like the idea, again, of exploring these non-alcohol based medicines and just doing something different. The medicated vinegars, suddenly they're going into pestos and salad dressings, and people are doing their, vinegar shots in the morning with these medicated vinegars. I think for the sake of compliance, that could be really cool, and just finding another way, another layer of how we can bring the wisdom, magic, and medicine of the plants into our daily, right? So, fantastic question. Thank you. Let's go to our last. Hi, Josh. Are there any protections we should invoke when we open ourselves to plant spirits? On one of my meditations, I felt there was another presence just outside my peripheral senses. So this is a fantastic question. I have 2 answers, okay? The first is that the best form of protection is strong allyships in the world of spirit. Repeat. The best form of protection is strong personal allyships in the world of spirit, meaning that when we are very close with our ancestors, when we are very close with a particular tree, when we are really close with a particular god or goddess or deity or hero, that is by nature apotropaic. It's by nature a protective situation because we now have eyes on one side of the hedge, and then we have our eyes on this side of the hedge. So when someone comes into the periphery, we have allies on the periphery who are able to see into the angle of that presence in a way that maybe we just get a sense about, right? So people worry a lot about protection, and I say this: the more friends you have on the other side, on what we say in the green art tradition, on the other side of the hedge, in the world of the green, the more protected you are just innately, right? I do a little charm every single morning before I leave the house. I have a juniper spirit sachet that I carry in my pocket, and I ask juniper to protect me from all angles as I go out and do my day. And that's the extent of it. I don't do really any other formal or more ritualized forms of protection anymore. I think I probably used to, and I've certainly written about it. So that's one point. The second point, and if you have a copy of my book, the Green Art book, this is in there. And also, I think there might be a YouTube class. If so, I'm going to find it and I'll put a link in below. This ritual that was taught to me by Privet, that we can do a hedge raising meditation. So in a nutshell, it's better explained with diagram and everything in the book, the Green Art book. But if I'm going to do a journey or a working where I feel really vulnerable, or I'm working with a client and the space is vulnerable, or a group working, or blessing a space, or just whenever I want to try and like bring in the bubble. You know the bubble when you're like so invested in what you're doing that the world around you sort of disappears, that feeling, right? And it's also a very protective feeling. I will sit or stand or be in the space and imagine a circle around me that is at the perimeter of the space that I need to work in. And I really let that line of demarcation exist strongly in my inner vision, in my imaginal realm, eyes opened, eyes closed, it doesn't matter. You can pace it a few times to help lock it in. That's nice. And then I imagine a protective ally of mine, or a generally protective ally, like privet, right? Privet is a great ally to call, or plants that are hedgerow type plants. And I imagine them growing from seed all around me. So roots reaching down into the land underneath me, reaching up and over the top of me. And I do that until I feel like an experience that I am surrounded by this dense hedge of protective foliage, so thick, so dense that no one could get through it, right? That it's almost impermeable. We've seen hedgerows that are like that, right? With the brambles and the different plants. They're so dense and thick and intertwined, and maybe there's some plants in there with thorns and spikes that we couldn't get through, right? So that's one ritual that I will do. Another more simplified version of that comes from the Celtic concept of the need fire, right? That somebody doesn't really take full possession of a space until they kindle a fire. So sometimes all my protective work is lighting a candle, or maybe we're out at the bonfire lighting the bonfire. And the awareness that when I light that fire, I'm entering into an agreement with the spirits of place that I will be a good steward of that space through the duration of that fire being lit, while that need fire is lit, that I'm a guest, but that I will behave, and I will take responsibility for what happens and how it happens until the fire is out, and that the light of that fire reaches out in all directions, right? So we're kind of wrapped up in this orb of the light emanating from the fire, and that then becomes the protected space. Just like if you're out, going rough, camping, and you light a campfire and it's night, you can only see out to the edges of where that light reaches, and then it's kind of like pitch black after that. So that's the unknown, the chaotic, right? And then everything within the light is our ritual space, our sacred space, our harmonious space. So rituals like that. The probably simplest thing, though, is to become friends with a plant or tree spirit that you feel or has folkloric connections to being protective, right? Find the hedgerowy plants, or the spiky plants, or the densely growing plants. I mentioned privet a lot because so many, privet is like a Chinese native, but so many people where I live grow privet as a natural fence, and you can't get through that, right? It's just not possible to get through a privet fence. So I've made friends with privet intentionally to ask them their help to protect spaces when I need that hedge around me. But I like, going really far with it and having the root system go underneath me and hold me from below, and then imagining the aerial parts go up above me, and you're kind of being sealed into this nice little vessel. So hopefully that's helpful. When in doubt, ask your friends on the other side to watch your back, because they will. So fantastic questions this month. Thank you all so very much. This is really one of my favorite things to do. I get so inspired by what you all are thinking about and working on. And so much of this becomes seeds for future classes. So this is how we all participate in making all this magic happen. So thank you so much. Happy May. Happy May Day. May is a sacred month for me in my practice and the wheel of the year that I work. So I'm very excited. I hope that this month brings you beauty and peace and plenty. And I'll see you real soon.